Which of these things do you think are useful? Sort them into usable and non-usable by dragging them to the appropriate box. If an object is useful, state its use. Resources are valuable because they fulfill human needs. As our needs increase and technology develops further, we need more of these resources to meet our demands. So, the use of our raw natural resources such as water, sunlight, wind, metal, plants and animals has gone up a lot over the past few centuries. Today, resources are used in many more ways in addition to the way they were used earlier. Water was earlier used for drinking, washing, and growing crops. In addition to the earlier uses, can you list some uses of water that have developed over the last few centuries? Earlier, energy from the sun was used for drying things. The sun was also used to figure out directions and to tell the time. Can you think of any modern uses of the sun? Wind is a natural resource that has been used for centuries for sailing, threshing grains, and even for flying kites. How is wind as a resource used now for productive purposes? Metals were earlier used for making utensils, jewelry, and weapons as well. Can you think of ways in which metals are used now? Trees and plants have always provided food and medicine. The wood from trees was also used extensively as firewood. Animals were earlier used in agriculture, for their milk, and for transportation. How has the use of animals changed or increased in modern times? The main engine driving all these changes in the use of resources are human beings. They are in fact the most important resource. Their labor as well as their intellectual potential can be used to bring out the utility of all other resources. However, humans should use natural resources carefully so that they are not exhausted or wasted. Otherwise, we could face a scarcity of these in the future. The warm sunshine and the air we breathe, the water in our oceans and the rivers, the fertile soil and the abundant minerals are all natural resources. Resources that are available freely in nature and used without many changes to it are called natural resources. In certain cases, tools and technology are required to use a natural resource to its optimum level. For example, a saw is used to cut a tree down into small, usable logs. The drill technology is used to drill oil and natural gas for our consumption. Natural resources may be classified on the basis of their level of development and use, origin, stock, and distribution. Click each classification tab to learn more. Based on their level of development and utilization, resources can be classified into two groups: potential resources and actual resources. Potential resources are resources whose quantity is not entirely known and are not fully utilized at present. This might be due to the lack of sufficient knowledge or technology required to develop these resources. For example, the uranium found in Ladakh is a potential resource since it has not yet been used. Actual resources are those whose quantity we know. These resources have already been developed and are currently being utilized. The petroleum fields where oil and natural gas is mined and alluvial soil used for cultivation of crops are examples of actual resources. Until some time back, the energy from the sun was not fully utilized for commercial purposes and hence it was a potential resource. But with the development of solar technology for generating electricity and running equipment such as street lights, traffic signals, etc., it is now an actual resource. Thus, a potential resource can become an actual resource after it has been developed and utilized. From their origin, natural resources may be biotic or abiotic. The living components of the environment, for example plants and animals, are known as the biotic components of the environment. The non-living components of the environment, such as land, water, and temperature, are known as the abiotic components. The stock of resources available for use may vary. Based on the availability of the stock, natural resources can be classified as renewable and non-renewable. Renewable sources of energy are replaced rapidly by natural processes and do not get easily exhausted. Wind energy and solar energy are examples of renewable sources of energy. Non-renewable energy sources have been in use for a long time. They generally have a limited stock and take thousands of years to replenish. Coal, petroleum and natural gas are some examples of non-renewable resources. The distribution of natural resources depends upon a number of physical factors such as landscape, climate and altitude. Based on distribution, natural resources can be classified into ubiquitous and localized. Certain natural resources may be distributed throughout the world so that everybody can access them equally. Such resources are called ubiquitous resources. For example, air and sunlight are ubiquitous resources. Resources that are available only in certain regions are called localized resources. For example, minerals and fertile soil are localized resources. The earth is rich in natural resources such as land, water, forest, sunlight, and minerals. Human beings need these natural resources for their very existence on the earth. Sometimes, humans change the form of the natural resource to suit their own advantage, for example, by converting wooden logs to paper, or by developing infrastructure like roadways, means of communication, etc. These are all called human-made resources. So, we realize that human beings are also a resource, as without them, the natural resources would not be utilized to the maximum. Human resources are individuals who are a part of the workforce, be it a country or an organization. Human resource also refers to the mental and physical ability of people in transforming the available physical material into a valuable resource. In other words, the quality of the human resources available in a country is determined by the level of knowledge, skills, and technological advancements that the people exhibit. However, any country or organization can improve the quality of its human resources by imparting education and training and an opportunity to undertake research. Good health is also an additional factor that helps in improving the potential of the human resource. This can be achieved by providing regular health checkups both pre-birth and post-birth of individuals. It is noticed that countries that provide essential medical health facilities for their citizens largely have better quality of human resources.
Many people in India have started realizing the importance of conservation of resources. However, two communities have been particularly active in this direction. One in Maharashtra and the other in Rajasthan. Let's look at the transformation of the model village of Ralegan Siddhi in Maharashtra first. Earlier, Ralegan Siddhi was a poverty-ridden village in a semi-arid region. The annual rainfall was as low as 400 to 500 millimeters. And what little rain did fall would drain off, leaving the soil eroded and unfit for cultivation. The scarce rainfall was sufficient to grow only one crop annually in about 300 acres of land, even though 2,200 acres were available. Consequently, the village faced water and food scarcity, as well as poverty. From 1975, steps began to be taken for conservation, starting with water resource. To raise the water table, loose boulder structures were constructed to stop water runoff. Ponds were also created to store rainwater. Canals were dug to channel rainwater into fields. Continuous contour trenches, which are deep canals dug along hill slopes, were also created in fields to prevent water from running off. The villagers themselves got involved in planting trees to avoid soil erosion. Due to these attempts to conserve rainwater, the water table in the area has risen. Through such water conservation measures, farmers growing one crop a year in about 300 acres of land could now grow two crops in about 1,500 acres of land. The granaries in the village are also better stocked due to this. Apart from water conservation, the other achievement of Ralegan Siddhi is the generation of power from renewable resources. Solar energy has been harnessed for generating power. The street lights in the village mostly use solar power. Many households also generate energy from biogas projects. In this way, through water conservation and energy generation measures, the village of Ralegan Siddhi has transformed tremendously over the years. Another movement to conserve resources had started much earlier with the Bishnoi community in Rajasthan. Since 1485, this community has been involved in the conservation of trees and wild animals. As protectors of flora, the Bishnois do not fell green trees and only use the wood of trees that are dead. The Bishnois are famous for even sacrificing their lives to protect trees. History talks about 300 Bishnois who were killed by the reigning king's men because the Bishnois protested the felling of trees by hugging them. In fact, the Chipko movement in India was inspired by this tree-hugging act of the Bishnois. The Bishnois also prefer using cow dung for creating fire rather than using firewood. The Bishnois are also kind to all animals. Deer, peacocks and black bucks roam around freely in and around their settlements. In fact, due to their efforts, the hunting and poaching of chinkaras and black bucks in Rajasthan is under control, and these animals are conserved well in this region. The Bishnois also rear cows, but they do not sell dairy products or slaughter animals for meat. Their methods of conservation have earned them the name of the first environmentalists of India. Now let's take a look at all the conservation measures adopted by the Ralegan Siddhi and the Bishnoi communities.